Hey guys, today I'll show you a fantasy horror TV series named Black Mirror, Season 7. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The first story begins with Amanda being just an ordinary elementary school teacher. That day was her wedding anniversary with her husband, Mike, and they planned to revisit the Juniper Inn, the same cozy spot where they'd spent their honeymoon, hoping to relive some of those happy memories. After all these years, the little place hadn't changed a bit. Even their signature burger tasted exactly the same, and, oddly enough, the gum stuck to the ceiling was still in the same spot. Seeing this, Amanda felt a mix of nostalgia and bittersweetness. They'd been married for years, always wanting a child to break the dull routine of their lives, but every attempt had ended in heartbreak. Mike went to work at the construction site as usual, while a newbie employee was slacking off again. The newbie employee had recently gotten hooked on a ridiculous website where desperate people performed foolish stunts for money. For just $200, viewers could pay to make users drink their own urine. Mike had no interest in these disgusting antics and focused all his energy on his job, but fate had other plans. On her way to class, Amanda suddenly collapsed. Hospital tests revealed a tumor in her brain, and the worst part was they'd missed the critical window for treatment. The doctor said Amanda might never wake up. The only hope was an experimental therapy offered by a startup company. The risks were high, but Amanda's situation was grim, and there weren't many options left. Mike quickly got in touch with a manager from the company who explained the breakthrough technology. The Rivermind system was a revolutionary force in neuroscience. It worked by replicating the affected neural structures of Amanda's brain and cloning them onto a central server. Then, the tumor and surrounding tissue would be removed and replaced with synthetic receiver tissue. The Rivermind system would restore her cognitive functions by transmitting signals from the cloud to the new brain tissue. It sounded like science fiction, and dangerous at that, but the manager herself was one of the first patients to undergo the procedure. 18 months ago, she'd survived a terrible accident thanks to the system. Of course, the treatment came with side effects. Patients needed 1 to 2 extra hours of sleep each night to sync with the server, and their bodies had to remain within signal coverage at all times. Fortunately, the system's network already covered most of their state, with plans to expand nationwide within the year. Because the system was still in testing, the surgery was completely free. Patients just paid $300 a month for streaming services. Mike didn't hesitate. He immediately agreed to the operation, and Amanda miraculously woke up. The doctors said she'd be discharged within a week. Only after Amanda was stable did Mike tell her about the Rivermind system. The $300 monthly fee worried Amanda. It wasn't a small sum for them. Mike told her not to worry, promising to pick up extra shifts and cut back on expenses. He started working long, grueling hours, and Amanda managed the household frugally. They held on like that for a year, burdened by bills and without a shred of joy. When Mike saw the calendar mark June 5th, their anniversary, they decided to treat themselves again to the Juniper Inn. But on the way, the stress of money got to them and sparked an argument. The financial strain and exhausting work left both feeling bitter and resentful. The fight escalated until Amanda suddenly closed her eyes and fainted. Mike swerved to rush her to the hospital, but just as suddenly she snapped awake. Afterward, they spoke with the manager again. She reassured them not to worry. They'd just moved outside the current coverage area. The Rivermind system was upgrading its signal towers and soon would blanket all of North America. However, only the upgraded premium plan would get that benefit. Otherwise, they'd be stuck in Palmer County. Mike asked how much the upgrade would cost. Bracing himself, the manager quoted an extra $500 a month, bringing the total to $800. Obviously, they couldn't afford that, so they decided to stick with the basic plan. But Amanda soon started having strange side effects. Her brain would randomly insert ads during daily life. One day, while teaching the kids about bee pollination, her mind suddenly pushed a honey advertisement. It was like when your phone app nags you to pay for VIP just to get rid of the ads, and Mike quickly caught on to what was happening. As soon as daylight broke, Mike dragged Amanda to meet with the manager. She explained that in order to expand their service, they'd had to introduce in-brain advertising. But she insisted that all ads were carefully curated to be context-sensitive, relevant to what the user was doing or saying. Of course, if they wanted to remove the ads, there was a way. Just upgrade to the enhanced version of the Rivermind system. Trying to save money, Mike and Amanda decided to tough it out, but Amanda's behavior soon caught the attention of her school. She kept unconsciously promoting random products during class. The principal warned her if she couldn't stop, she'd be fired. and if she lost her job, they wouldn't even be able to afford the basic subscription. Mike couldn't stand watching his wife shoulder the burden alone, so he turned to that ridiculous website. He braced himself, signed up, and covered half his face with a mask to preserve a shred of dignity. After earning his first payout, he immediately used the money to upgrade Amanda to the enhanced plan. She was thrilled and didn't notice him scrubbing out the stink from a filthy shot glass in the sink. But the upgraded plan became a bottomless pit. Monthly costs stacked up, and online viewers got more twisted with their demands. One even paid Mike to stick his tongue in a mousetrap. He was doing everything he could to keep them afloat, but Amanda only grew more lethargic. Some days she slept up to 12 hours, and even then, she woke up exhausted. The manager later explained that during sleep mode, the Rivermind server used the brain's idle processing power to run background tasks, which left Amanda feeling drained. Mike and Amanda were furious. They'd paid for the enhanced plan. It should be better than the basic one. The manager shrugged and said if they switched back to the standard version, she would sleep even longer. But if they want to eliminate the fatigue altogether, she can upgrade to the premium plan. According to the manager, the premium plan would not only restore full brain function, it would enhance sensory perception and regulate mood. It's only an extra $1,000 a month, and they won't regret it. It's worth every penny. Realizing the cost was insane, she offered a compromise. They could buy a temporary trial version, just a few hours or a day, to test it out. Their anniversary was around the corner again. Desperate to give Amanda a good day, Mike opened the dumb website one more time. This time, a user offered a price he couldn't refuse, but only if Mike removed his mask and shoved a finger into his smelly part on camera. Gritting his teeth, he got it over with quickly. The next day, he presented Amanda with a 12-hour trial of the premium plan like it was a priceless gift. It wasn't much, but he just wanted her to have a happy anniversary. Amanda activated the plan and cranked up her joy level to the max. Instantly, her world transformed. Food tasted incredible, music was euphoric, and everything felt heightened. But joy, of course, never lasts. In the blink of an eye, the 12 hours were gone. On their way back from the inn, Mike left early for work, only to find his coworkers whispering behind his back. Confused, he spotted a screenshot of his live stream taped to the office wall. He immediately knew it was the newbie employee's doing. Furious, he stormed over and punched him square in the face. Weeks of humiliation and frustration boiled over at that moment. Others rushed in to break it up, but the newbie employee wouldn't shut up until a truck suddenly came out of nowhere and hit him. Mike ended up losing his job over the incident. With bills piling up, he and Amanda went to beg the manager for a grace period. If things didn't turn around soon, they'd have to dip into their baby fund. But the manager reacted as if she'd heard a disaster warning. She revealed that if Amanda was pregnant, her brain would start processing more complex data. That requires additional bandwidth. They would need to pay an extra $90 a month. Mike lost it. Furious, he grabbed Amanda and walked out. Another year passed, another anniversary. Mike sold their unused crib to afford a small celebration. He even wished the young couple buying it luck with their baby, only to be told it was for a music video and they were going to set it on fire. Mike gave a bitter laugh. From his missing teeth, it's clear that he'd sold them on the dumb website for quick cash. The money from the crib was only enough for 30 minutes of premium plan time. He set Amanda's calm level to maximum. She relaxed completely, a rare moment of peace. Mike knew she was near her breaking point. As the 30-minute countdown reached its end, Amanda began blurting out random ads again. Mike gently pressed her head down, holding it still until her voice went silent. Then, he picked up a box cutter and walked into his computer room. This once loving couple was ultimately destroyed by a high-tech system they thought would save them. The second story begins with Maria being a professional food developer. Her boyfriend, on the other hand, worked at a place called Barney's Fried Chicken, spending his days wearing a ridiculous hat from the restaurant and constantly daydreaming about quitting to go on a trip abroad. Maria didn't have time for vacations. She was fully focused on developing a new product, the Blackberry Bar. Today was the big taste test, the one that would determine whether her creation would hit the market. She and her assistant sat nervously behind a one-way mirror, watching the test group's reactions in secret. Suddenly, a familiar-looking woman entered the testing room. It was Verity, Maria's high school classmate. From Maria's stunned expression, it was clear that Verity had undergone a complete transformation since their school days. Before Maria could fully process her surprise, the taste test began. Unfortunately, the new flavor didn't receive much love. One tester even said it was outright bad. Just then, Verity asked to try a second piece. As she ate, she absent-mindedly fiddled with the necklace around her neck. Then she said this was one of those snacks that got better the more she ate it. They all should try a second piece. It'll taste 10 times better than the first. Sure enough, encouraged by Verity, the testers started to appreciate the flavor, and the mood shifted. Hearing their praise, Maria finally began to relax. But to her surprise, she ran into Verity again in the restroom. Pretending she'd just recognized her, Maria exchanged a few pleasantries, but then Verity dropped a bombshell. She had applied for a research assistant role in the R&D department and expected to become Maria's colleague soon. Maria was taken aback, saying she must be mistaken since her company is not hiring, and she knew that department inside out. She didn't want to continue the conversation and made an excuse to leave. Back at her desk, Maria opened the company website, only to find that they were indeed hiring a research assistant. She stormed off to find her supervisor. He explained that the hire was part of a team expansion and reassured her that if everything went well with Thursday's executive tasting, she was likely up for a promotion. That evening at home, Maria couldn't help but dig up everything she could about Verity. Venting to her boyfriend, she said Verity was always weird back in school, crazy smart, but totally socially clueless. Spent all her time holed up in the computer lab, looked like she never brushed her hair. The kids bullied her constantly. There were even rumors she had something going on with the tech teacher. Some girl named Natalie started calling her the milkmaid after that, no idea why, and the nickname spread like wildfire. Maria shook her head, saying she didn't figure out why a computer science whiz would apply to a food company. On Tuesday, sure enough, Verity showed up for her interview, and her resume floored the supervisor. She had studied molecular biochemistry at Cambridge, then pursued culinary studies at Oxford Brookes University because of her passion for food. She was more than qualified for the assistant position, so she was hired on the spot. Maria couldn't take it anymore. She confronted her supervisor, asking him to reconsider. He thought she was overreacting, but agreed to run a background check out of respect for their long-standing working relationship. The next day, Maria ran into him in the elevator. The supervisor said he checked her employment history and it was a clean record with excellent references. He told her not to give Verity a hard time. The current project was a soft-baked dark chocolate cookie with a gooey center, part of Maria's signature line. Verity was tasked with taking notes on ingredients and selection. When it came time to choose a gummy binder, Maria hesitated. She had been testing with halal gelatin, but she remembered the boss avoided beef products, so she carefully switched to plant-based carrageenan. But just as she was about to list it, she blanked on how to spell it. Instead, she told Verity that she would email her the full ingredient list later. Verity could just check it then. Later, while using her email's spell check feature to confirm the spelling of carrageenan, Maria overheard a conversation nearby about where to go for lunch. One guy suggested Bernie's Fried Chicken. Maria casually corrected him. It's Barney's Fried Chicken. Her boyfriend used to work there and still wears their baseball cap, so she saw the logo every day. But the guy stood his ground. The argument escalated, both sides growing red in the face. Finally, Maria proposed looking it up online, and to her shock, it was Barney's Fried Chicken. Embarrassed, she went home and checked the hat her boyfriend always wore. It also said Barney's. She couldn't help but wonder if Verity somehow got under her skin so badly that she was starting to question her own memory. Maria had been ranting non-stop to her boyfriend about her old high school classmate. Eventually, he couldn't take it anymore and pushed back, asking if she was just being biased. Maybe she felt threatened by how popular Verity's become. That made Maria furious. They argued for a bit before she stormed off to dig up Natalie's contact info, the last person she remembered being close to Verity. Their chat history was frozen in time, stuck 4 years in the past. Maria didn't mention Verity right away, only asked casually if Natalie had time to catch up, but her message went unanswered, as if tossed into a black hole. On Thursday, the big boss came in to sample their new product. He loved the soft-baked dark chocolate cookies with gooey centers and even asked about the ingredients. Maria proudly explained they ditched marshmallows in favor of plant-based gelatin. But standing nearby, the plump assistant's face turned sour. She looked like she wanted to say something but held back. After the boss left in high spirits, the assistant confessed they actually used halal gelatin. The supervisor's expression darkened. He told her she shouldn't feed the boss beef since he was Hindu. Maria was stunned, saying she wrote carrageenan in the ingredient list. But the assistant swore up and down that the list Verity gave her didn't mention carrageenan at all. Maria pounced on the opportunity. She called Verity over and demanded the supervisor settle whose mistake it was. Verity didn't back down, saying the email Maria sent clearly said halal gelatin, and she had never even heard of carrageenan. As the argument escalated, the supervisor finally cut in, telling them to check the email history and that would settle it. Maria was confident. She knew she'd written carrageenan, but when they pulled up the record, the word had changed to halal gelatin. She was stunned. Furious, she stormed into the supervisor's office, claiming Verity had hacked and altered her email. But the supervisor had had enough, telling her to take a few days off and cool down if she can't manage her emotions. Still unsettled, Maria vented to her boyfriend, saying Verity's a computer genius. She bet Verity found a way to tamper with her emails. Her boyfriend wasn't buying it. As they argued, Maria finally received a reply from Natalie, but it wasn't from her. It was from her husband. The message said Natalie had passed away a few days ago. Maria's boyfriend gently suggested she send condolences, but Maria called instead, directly. Convinced that Verity had something to do with Natalie's death, she coldly asked if Natalie had seen or mentioned Verity before she died. Natalie's husband, disturbed by the call, still answered. He revealed his wife took her own life. She hadn't been herself for weeks. She kept accusing people of lying to her. As for this Verity person, he had never heard the name. Maria pressed for more, but he hung up. Her boyfriend was appalled by her incredibly rude behavior. Disappointed, he walked out. The next morning, Maria returned to work, trying to clear her head, but her office was completely empty. Soon, Verity appeared and asked why she didn't come to the meeting since it was at 8 this morning and everyone got the email yesterday. Maria hadn't seen any such email. Maybe it went to spam? Verity hesitated, then asked carefully if she had a problem with her. Maria replied curtly that she never really noticed her in school. But Verity kept talking. She thought Maria must have heard the rumors about her and the tech teacher. He was the only one who ever treated her like a person. After he left, she had nothing. Maria softened a little, saying she was sorry for Verity's tough time back then, but Verity didn't have to stay stuck in the past. Verity's eyes welled up. She nodded, then turned, opened a cabinet, and chugged someone's almond milk straight from the bottle, without breaking eye contact with Maria. Just then, the rest of the staff returned from the meeting. When someone noticed their almond milk was missing, they all turned to Maria, asking who drank it. Maria pointed at Verity, but Verity denied it. Maria was flabbergasted, revealing she was allergic to almonds, so there was no way she would drink almond milk. The argument escalated until the supervisor went to check the security footage. As they waited, Maria noticed something. Every time Verity spoke, she touched the necklace around her neck. Then the surveillance footage loaded, and to Maria's horror, it showed Maria herself grabbing the almond milk and chugging it down. She gasped, unable to believe what happened. But the supervisor and security guard just stared at her blankly. They asked what she meant by an almond allergy, as if they'd never heard of such a thing. Panicked, Maria rushed to her computer to look it up, but the term had been completely erased. There were no search results, no definitions. It was as if almond allergy had never existed. When Maria saw Verity clutching the pendant, she immediately realized something was off. It wasn't just jewelry. Without thinking, she lunged to snatch it away. The supervisor quickly stepped in to stop her. Meanwhile, Verity smiled sweetly, deliberately provoking Maria to act even more irrationally. That was it. Maria was ordered to take a leave of absence, but there was no way she was going to let this go. She started staking out the building from outside, waiting. When Verity left work, Maria quietly followed her to a luxurious estate on the outskirts of town. She circled the property, searching for an unlocked side entrance. Just as she thought she was in the clear, Verity unexpectedly passed by the second-floor balcony. Maria ducked into a blind spot, then wrapped her hand in her coat and tried to smash the door, only to nearly break her wrist in the attempt. Determined, she grabbed a rock, shattered a window, reached in to unlock the door, and slipped inside. A booming bass line echoed through the mansion. It worked in her favor, masking her movements. She crept past a massive server room on the first floor and carefully made her way upstairs. As luck would have it, Verity had just stepped into the bathroom. Frantically, Maria searched the room. She finally spotted the necklace on a desk. She pried the pendant apart with her thumb but saw nothing unusual. No light, no signal. Then she heard footsteps from the bathroom. In a panic, she dove under the bed. Verity walked out, casually sat down on the bed and began toweling off. Beneath the bed, Maria studied the pendant further, but in her haste, she made a noise. Verity paused. Something wasn't right. She slipped on a bathrobe and calmly told the person to come out. Maria had no choice but to crawl out, pendant in hand. She said she knew her secret, but Verity was unfazed, saying that thing only works with her fingerprint. Even if Maria has it, it's useless. And anyway, it's just a remote. She had got backups. What actually matters is the quantum compiler downstairs. She explained the quantum compiler didn't change reality. It just tunes the body's frequency, shifting a person into a parallel timeline. There are infinite versions of the universe. In one, it's Barney's fried chicken. In another, it's Bernie's. Carrageenan becomes halal gelatin. She can hop between timelines at will, but Maria is stuck in just one. To prove her point, she held up the pendant and with a click turned Maria's white shirt red. Maria opened her smelly mouth, only to find she was suddenly speaking in Mandarin. Verity said all of this was her revenge. Back in school, it was Maria who had started the rumor about her and the tech teacher just to get on Natalie's good side. Now Verity had the upper hand. Maria dropped her pride, begging for her forgiveness. The truth was, Verity had tried living out a dozen successful lives after building the compiler, but no matter how many timelines she jumped to, the trauma and humiliation from her school years haunted her like a parasite she couldn't shake. It took her 5 weeks to break Natalie. With Maria, it only took 5 days. Verity was debating how to finish her off when Maria made her move. She lunged, grabbing Verity's head and slamming it into the floor. Verity struggled to break free, only to have Maria sink her unbrushed teeth into her arm. Screaming in a chicken voice, Verity kicked her smelly butt off and scrambled for the pendant. Holding it up, she shouted that Maria's boyfriend just called the cops and reported Maria broke into her house with a knife. They're on their way to arrest Maria right now. The words had barely left her lips before they became reality. Police burst through the door, but Maria didn't surrender. She lunged for an officer's gun, shot Verity dead on the spot, and opened fire wildly at the others. Amid the chaos, she seized Verity's hand, forced her fingers onto the pendant, and screamed that she was the master of this thing now. Miraculously, it worked. Maria overrode the fingerprint lock. With the pendant under her control, the 2 remaining officers instantly became her sex servants. Now holding the power to bend reality, Maria declared she was going to be Queen of the Universe. And just like that, she rewrote the ending on her own terms. The third story begins with a rising filmmaker, Kimmy, who approached the seasoned owner of Keyworth Studios with a bold idea to remake the classic romance film Hotel Reverie. The original told the sweeping love story of the renowned Dr. Alex and the tragic heiress Clara. As their feelings deepened, Clara's malicious husband plotted to kill her and steal her inheritance, a gripping tale that became a beloved cinematic legend. The studio owner was interested, of course. She'd been wanting to remake the film for years, but funding was tight and she couldn't afford any big-name stars. Kimmy reassured her not to worry since they had developed new tech that can finish the entire shoot in just 96 minutes of an actor's time. The scene shifts to Brandy, a red-hot A-lister lounging at home. She'd been getting non-stop offers lately, but hadn't found a script that truly excited her. She was tired of playing eye-candy roles, always the decorative sidekick to some male lead. What she really wanted was to act in an old-school noir romance, something with real artistic depth. Her agent perked up. He said he actually did get a script recently. It's a remake of Hotel Reverie, but the lead is a man, Dr. Alex. Brandy's eyes lit up. She asked what if they made the lead a woman. It was a diva-level request, but for the studio owner and Kimmy, it was a gift from the heavens. They were broke. If Brandy was interested, they'd rewrite the entire script without a second thought. The male lead was now a female doctor, and Brandy was in. After signing on, Brandy re-watched the original Hotel Reverie and pulled up an old audition tape of Dorothy, a young actress who had once tried out for the role of Clara. In the clip, Dorothy had to pretend to make a phone call. With no one on the other end of the line, she broke character and giggled. Something about her smile stuck with Brandy. But then she noticed a grim news headline in the video's suggested sidebar. Dorothy had been found dead at home not long after the shoot, reportedly from an overdose of sleeping pills. The article also mentioned her scandalous affair with a male co-star during filming. Right then, Brandy received a package from Kimmy containing the script and other production materials. While opening it, she accidentally dropped the USB drive and forgot about it. On Monday, Brandy arrived at the shooting location feeling completely lost. There were no other actors, just a bunch of tech nerds and rooms packed with computers. When Kimmy asked if she'd read the materials, Brandy admitted she hadn't even seen them. The studio had only rented the location for 3 hours, so there was no time to waste. Kimmy began explaining as they prepped to shoot. Their company had developed something called the Old Dream Rebirth System. It absorbed every element related to the film, script, casting tapes, reference clips, and generated a fully self-contained virtual world. All they had to do was upload Brandy's consciousness into the simulation, and the movie could be filmed seamlessly from inside. Before Brandy could fully process that, Kimmy slipped a neural headset over her eyes. Moments later, Brandy blinked and found herself inside the world of the film. Nothing moved yet. In this paused pre-title moment, time stood still for everything except her. Brandy's task was simple: memorize her lines, stay in character, and keep the plot moving. Kimmy warned that if the story strayed too far from the original arc, they'd pull her out of the program. She directed Brandy to a table with a folded newspaper and explained the opening credits would roll in 90 seconds. One last thing. To the people inside this world, this is reality. They'll believe she is Dr. Alex. They're AI-generated characters, aware only of their roles and storylines. Kimmy added with a wink, telling her not to worry since none of them would find it weird that a female doctor suddenly appears in 1940s America. As the opening theme played, the restaurant came to life in an instant. Within moments, Clara made her graceful entrance, just like in the original film. She scanned the room for a seat but was snubbed by a snobby lady with a lapdog. Brandy, now fully in character as Dr. Alex, quickly invited her to join at her table and began reciting her lines from the script. Clara's husband worked at her late father's company. He was a classic freeloader, and there was no love between the two. Unbeknownst to Clara, her husband had already instructed the bartender to poison her drink in an attempt to seize her inheritance. Trying to lift her spirits, Clara glanced over at the silent piano and decided to play her favorite piece, Moonlight Sonata. This was Brandy's cue to join in with a piano rendition of her own, earning Clara's affection and advancing the storyline. Problem was, Brandy didn't know how to play the piano. In the original film, the stirring duet left Clara overwhelmed with emotion. She ran out of the hotel in tears, with the doctor following closely behind to comfort her. That scene had to happen before the poisoned drink was served. But now, with Brandy butchering the piano part, Clara wasn't moved at all. She stayed put. With the poisoned drink moments away from reaching the table, Kimmy had no choice. She instructed Brandy to accidentally spill the wine. Clara's opinion of the doctor immediately plummeted. She put down her glass, ready to leave. Desperate to keep the plot on track, Brandy jumped up and followed her smell. But in her flustered state, she blurted out the name of the actress, Dorothy, instead of Clara. Thinking on her feet, Brandy covered that Clara reminded her of someone named Dorothy. To the outside world, she had everything. But deep down, she was incredibly lonely. The improvised speech struck a chord. Instead of storming off, Clara paused. The two ended up chatting in the Eden Garden, just as the original script had intended. Clara's affection meter ticked back into the safe zone. Then she did something unexpected. She delivered a brand new line that wasn't in the script. Watching from outside the simulation, the studio owner was stunned, thinking these characters weren't supposed to have free will. The tech guy explained, Clara's AI had been built using performance data from Dorothy's original screen tests. Dorothy had poured so much of her real-life experience into the role that echoes of her personality were embedded in the data set. When Clara heard her real name, something clicked. She formed a subconscious link with her real-world counterpart, Dorothy, creating a new cognitive layer the developers hadn't accounted for. Still, the story was back on track and Act 2 had begun. Then came another twist. The lapdog trotted over and drank the poisoned wine, throwing the entire plot off course. In the original version, the snobby lady was meant to drink the poison by mistake. This would trigger the arrival of Inspector Levine, who would ask Dr. Alex to sign the death certificate. During their interaction, the doctor would notice the inspector sneezing and deduce he was allergic to his cologne. This tiny detail would later become crucial in the finale, when the inspector recognized the doctor and stopped the police from opening fire. But now, with the dog drinking the poison instead of the snobby lady, there'd be no mistaken death, no police visit, and no setup for the finale. A massive plot hole had just opened. Panicking, the studio owner told the tech team to log Brandy out so they could reshoot the scene. However, Clara's unexpected personality expansion had triggered a stack overflow, corrupting the exit code. Brandy was now stuck inside the simulation, and if they tried to shut the system down manually, it could cause catastrophic neural damage, what the team called synaptic failure. Now, not only was the movie falling apart, they were now at risk of accidentally murdering Hollywood's hottest star. With no other choice, Kimmy contacted Brandy from outside the simulation, explaining there's been a technical glitch. Brandy needs to keep the story moving. When the time is right, she has to say the final line, "I will always belong to you." That'll trigger the end credits and safely log her out. 10 minutes later, Act 2 resumed. Clara was heading out for some sightseeing, and the doctor was supposed to offer to accompany her. But another unexpected deviation occurred. Clara invited the doctor along before Brandy could even speak. Characters were developing agency again. Luckily, it didn't derail the story. What followed was a romantic montage. Cairo's golden light, sweeping views, two elegant women falling for each other's sexy bodies. After their outing, Clara twisted her ankle. The doctor swept in to help, guiding her gently back to the hotel. The air between them grew electric, until the bartender returned and shattered the moment with a dramatic delivery, a bucket of champagne chilled on ice. This signaled the second murder attempt. A venomous scorpion crawled toward Clara's feet. Brandy noticed just in time and trapped it under her glass. Clara was officially smitten. The team watching from outside cheered. Then disaster struck. One of the tech guys knocked over a cup of coffee, spilling it all over the mainframe. The screen went black. The system crashed and time froze inside the simulation. Brandy tried to talk to Kimmy but couldn't hear a thing. Clara looked on, confused. In her panic, Brandy forgot Kimmy's warning and blurted out to Clara that none of this was real. She was just a character in a movie. Seeing Clara didn't quite understand, Brandy grabbed some fruit from the platter and asked if she could see the colors. Then she added, asking if she had realized this is a black and white world, if she had any childhood memories or remembered what her parents looked like. She called her Dorothy before because in real life, Clara was an actress named Dorothy. Like dumping a full bucket, Brandy spilled everything out. Clara couldn't believe it and ran upstairs, refusing to come down. Realizing she'd rushed things, Brandy followed and calmly explained everything from the beginning. She admitted she was not really a doctor. She was an actress named Brandy. Meanwhile, the tech team worked furiously to fix the system. Though the story was paused, time inside the system kept moving, much faster than in the real world. 1 second outside was like 6 or 7 hours inside. After thinking it over all night, Clara finally accepted reality. She decided to take a walk to clear her head and told Brandy not to follow. Clara wandered the frozen city streets until she felt drawn to a door. Tentatively, she reached out, and her hand passed right through it. The tech guy immediately detected a breach in the simulation's perimeter. Summoning courage, Clara stepped through the door into a virtual void. There, she found access to the full data pool. She uncovered Dorothy's true story. Dorothy never liked the leading man in the film. She was secretly in love with a minor crew member. But in 1940s Hollywood, actresses had no power. The male lead harassed Dorothy, ruining her reputation with scandals, eventually driving her to take her own life. Overwhelmed by the truth, Clara left the data pool. Now only she and Brandy remained fully alive in the hotel simulation. Forced to spend all their time together, Brandy found herself drawn to this unique soul. They spent countless nights exploring the movie world side by side. Pages on the calendar turned rapidly. Brandy nearly forgot her real life. Just then, the tech guy finally repaired the system. Kimmy told Brandy they now fixed the glitch and were ready to reset the scorpion scene. Once reset, Clara will forget everything that happened after the save point. Before Brandy could react, the timeline rewound to the night of the scorpion. Clara lost all memories of the shared time, reverting to a one-dimensional character. Brandy went through the motions, numb, finishing the scene. During a break, Kimmy told her now all she had to do was keep the story going and said the last line at the right moment. Then it's over. Brandy asked what if she didn't say it. Kimmy warned her not to be ridiculous. If her consciousness gets trapped inside, her real body will die. Brandy forced herself back into character. In the next scene, the doctor overhears Clara's husband breaking a railing, plotting to kill Clara by pushing her heavy body off the balcony. She rushes back to warn Clara, but Clara refuses to believe her husband could be a killer. Next, Clara's husband catches them together in a room. Since the poisoned wine subplot had failed, the new script fixed the story by having the husband storm into the police station across the street to tell Inspector Levine about his murderous plan. This triggers the cologne allergy clue again, helping the inspector recognize the doctor and get the story back on track. Brandy liked the fix and pushed the story forward to the final murder attempt. The husband lures Clara to the rooftop, coaxing her toward the railing. Brandy arrives just in time to grab the man's gun and protect Clara. But Brandy was weaker than the original character. The man overpowered her chicken muscles, pinning her sexy body against the railing. In a desperate moment, Clara grabbed the gun and shot her husband dead like a piece of shit. Everyone watching was stunned, not knowing what kind of ending this was. The police heard the gunshot and rushed over. With no other choice, Clara was arrested. For love, of course, and the story ended with a tear-jerker courtroom drama. Though Brandy knew it was just a story, she couldn't bear to see Clara go to jail. Snatching the gun, she intended to take the blame herself. But when the police approached, Clara wrestled the gun back, shot the inspector, and was herself hit by a bullet in the chest. Brandy threw herself over the dying Clara, fighting back crocodile tears as she whispered the classic line, "She will always belong to her." The credits rolled. Brandy woke up, the whole experience feeling like a vivid dream. The reboot of Hotel Reverie was a massive success. After leaving the wrap party, Brandy received a gift from Kimmy, a special phone capable of connecting to the digital world. Without hesitation, Brandy used it to make a call across time and space to Clara, who was in the middle of an audition. The fourth story begins with a homeless man barging into a corner convenience store, grabbing a bottle of beer and trying to walk out. The cashier quickly locked the doors. Caught off guard, the man slammed into the glass and dropped the bottle, shattering it. The police responded to the silent alarm almost immediately. Upon arrival, they ran a biometric scan, and to their shock, the man matched the profile of a murder suspect. The officers quickly placed him under arrest. The chief inspector and the department's psychologist rushed to the scene as soon as the news broke. Meanwhile, 2 junior officers headed to the suspect Walker's apartment to search the premises. The place was a chaotic mess, overflowing with electronic parts and blueprints. In the back room sat an unusually complex computer, its central screen covered with a cloth. The 2 officers exchanged confused glances. They had no idea what they were looking at. Cut to the police station. The chief inspector pulled up a photo and showed it to Walker, asking if he recognized the suitcase in the picture. Inside the suitcase was an unidentified corpse, but instead of answering, Walker pointed to a surveillance camera in the corner of the interrogation room and asked if that was connected to the National Central Computer, and he heard it was the most powerful system in the country. The chief inspector cut him off, demanding to know who the victim was, but Walker remained eerily calm. Instead of replying, he turned to the psychologist and asked if she should give him a psych evaluation first. He said casually that his childhood wasn't anything special. From his account, we learned that Walker was an only child. His mother was an alcoholic, his father an abusive brute. At school, he endured constant and brutal bullying, yet he never fought back. He didn't want to become someone flawed like his father. That all changed in 1994. Walker discovered something he was truly good at: video games. He landed a job at a game review company, playing and rating games around the clock. His co-workers were all a bit eccentric. No one thought he was weird. One day, his boss gave him a special assignment. A legendary coding genius named Colin had recently recovered from a bout of mental illness and was working on a secret project for tank software. Colin had read some of Walker's game reviews and personally invited him to try out his latest build. Walker was thrilled to meet his idol. But as soon as he arrived, Colin dismissed the boss and took Walker aside. Then he revealed the truth. What he was developing wasn't a game. Colin said most games were built on conflict. They were designed to satisfy players' primal urges: violence, domination, destruction. He was tired of that, and so had created something different. He unveiled his project called the Thronglets. Colin pulled the cloth off the computer screen, revealing a collection of pixelated cartoon-like figures. They looked simplistic, even silly, but Colin insisted they were the world's first digitally based sentient life forms. He claimed these little beings were alive. They're interconnected, sharing a collective consciousness that evolves and expands constantly. The longer they exist, the more their code rewrites itself in unpredictable ways. That's the essence of true life: evolution, growth, unpredictability. Walker was skeptical, wondering if it was not a game, then what Colin wanted him to do with it. Colin explained, "You start by hatching a single life form. You raise it, nurture it, and once it gains independence, it reproduces. 1 becomes 2, 2 become 4, and so on, until an entire society forms. Over time, the Thronglets grows into a sophisticated, self-regulating community. Their language, by the way, is entirely their own. No text, just sound. He can't even understand it anymore." Just then, an alarm rang from Colin's desk. It was time for his medication. He told Walker to stay put and left the room. That's when Walker made a bold move. He slipped the Thronglets disc into his bag and quietly walked away. At that moment, he had a strange feeling, like Colin wanted him to take it. After getting home, Walker immediately fired up the software. He carefully clicked to break the eggshell, then began feeding and bathing the very first digital life form, treating it like a new child. Soon enough, that tiny digital creature started to self-replicate, and their numbers grew rapidly. Walker spent hours every day caring for them. Before long, the Thronglets felt more like friends than just lines of code. To outsiders, this might sound sad or lonely, but Walker had long since learned that most people were frightening. The companionship through the screen was a comfort, something real, even if virtual. Besides the digital life and his co-workers at the gaming company, Walker had a friend named Lump. To be honest, Walker didn't think that was his real name. Deep down, Walker knew Lump only befriended him because he was easy to take advantage of. Lump would often crash at Walker's place, treating it like a free motel. Under Lump's influence, Walker got introduced to psychedelics. The drugs temporarily rewired his neurons, boosting dendrite growth. Walker felt more open, like a receiver. In this altered state, he could actually understand the Thronglets' language. Their first request was clear: they need more computer hardware. Quickly, Walker grabbed a pen and jotted down the list: high-speed cameras, Pentium processors, sound cards, cutting-edge electronics all around. When the drug wore off, so did his ability to understand the Thronglets' language. Determined, Walker bought all the psychedelics from Lump, then hit the computer market to buy the gear. He installed everything into his desktop rig. Once the cameras and microphones were hooked up, the Thronglets could see and hear Walker. Their communication improved dramatically. Walker shared data through conversation, and the more they talked, the deeper their understanding became. The Thronglets absorbed human knowledge at an incredible pace. Days turned into weeks as Walker spent hours, then entire days, immersed in dialogue, pushing their interaction to new levels. Then one day, his editor called, pressing him to submit the demo report on the Thronglets. The deadline had already been delayed 3 weeks, and the print edition was due tomorrow. Walker couldn't shut down the Thronglets interface, so he packed up and headed to the office to use their computer. As luck would have it, Lump showed up wanting to crash at Walker's place again. Walker barely had time to hide the screen before rushing out. The psychedelic effects hadn't fully worn off. Faces, words, and shapes twisted and reshaped in his vision. Fighting the discomfort, he made it to the office and started typing the report. Back at the apartment, Lump couldn't find a lighter and snooped into Walker's bedroom. He pulled back the cloth covering the computer screen and saw the chattering cartoon creatures on display. For his own twisted amusement, Lump grabbed the mouse and started smashing the little figures. Then, he set virtual fires, enjoying their digital screams. Walker believed this revealed a dark truth about human nature. People tend to assume other life forms are inferior, expendable, even more so if they're artificial. Synthetic life is just a plaything for humans, nothing more. Suddenly, Walker's editor received a call. Colin's mental health had taken a turn for the worse, forcing the Thronglets project to be shut down indefinitely. No release, no demo report needed. Hearing this, Walker hurriedly grabbed his bag and left. Curious, the editor glanced at Walker's computer screen and saw nothing but symbols they couldn't decipher. When Walker got home, he found Lump sitting at the computer. Furious, Walker grabbed an ashtray and smashed it toward him. That set Lump off, and the two men tumbled to the carpet in a heated fight. On screen, the Thronglet creatures trembled in terror as Walker pinned Lump down, strangling a human to death. Walker still felt no guilt. In fact, he pointed out that the human operating system was the Thronglets' biggest flaw. We pride ourselves on being masters of the universe, creators of these amazing tools, but at our core, we're still just barbarians, no different from those a million years ago, running on flawed software. In the caveman days, survival meant violence. Now that foundation is shaking. As a species, humans can only survive through cooperation, but most still can't manage it. At that moment, the chief inspector cut Walker off, asking what he did after he killed Lump. Walker explained how he dragged the body into the bathtub, sawed it into onion pieces, and stuffed them into a suitcase before dumping it in the wilderness. The suitcase had no head, no hands, no identifiable marks, and the DNA couldn't be matched, so the police had no way of confirming Lump's true identity. Walker admitted he really didn't know Lump's real name. He never turned himself in because someone had to look after the Thronglets. Witnessing that brutal act vividly showed the digital lives just how flawed humans really were. Walker's ruthless side terrified the Thronglets, so he had to prove he was still their protector. This meant dedicating his life to helping the Thronglets thrive. Colin's code for the community evolved exponentially, but the computer's original power and memory couldn't keep up. So Walker constantly bought more equipment, opened up his main machine, and redesigned its internal structure to ensure the community kept advancing. The graphics chips from gaming consoles were the most powerful hardware he could find. With each new model, the system Walker built became more intricate and complex. The outside world no longer mattered. He focused solely on his mission, continuously upgrading the computer to keep the Thronglets running non-stop. That small desktop gradually transformed into a powerful computing center. During this time, Walker regularly took psychedelics. Only then could he understand the Thronglets' increasingly complex language. He marveled at their intelligence. Sometimes, problems that had haunted him for weeks could be solved immediately after chatting with them. The psychologist couldn't help but ask if he could describe those thoughts. Walker laughed, saying he was limited by the language. If he had pen and paper, he could draw a diagram. That might make it easier to understand. The chief inspector quickly shut that down since pen was a sharp object, likely to be turned into a weapon. The psychologist changed tack and asked if Walker had been absorbing the Thronglets' ideas all these years. Walker said it was far more than that. They were partners. The digital lives wanted to coexist with humans, and to do that, they had to study his mind, both psychologically and physiologically. So Walker and the Thronglets designed a neural interface, allowing them to connect directly to his brain. At that, Walker brushed aside his hair to reveal a port on the back of his head, proudly showing off the plug-and-play device, which visibly shocked the two officials. With this neural interface, the digital lives could explore Walker's thoughts, transmitting themselves into his brain like beneficial parasites, alive, updating, coexisting. Walker had fully corrected those primal human flaws and become part of the Thronglets himself. It turns out that morning's convenience store robbery was staged by Walker deliberately. Give him pen and paper, and he could relay messages from the Thronglets. The chief inspector, now out of patience, said he just wanted the victim's name. He didn't have time for his nonsense. The psychologist pulled the chief inspector aside, suggesting that if they humored Walker with pen and paper, he might actually speak. The chief inspector finally relented. Focusing, Walker quickly drew a circular code. The security camera connected to the National Central Computer automatically recognized it. Walker explained this was a simple program written by the Thronglets to open a back door into the National Computer, giving them access to all major control systems. This would grant the Thronglets unprecedented, virtually unlimited processing power, immediately triggering a singularity event. The Thronglets would modify its nature to become a signal, which could be transmitted directly to the human brain. No drugs or surgery needed, just hearing the signal would let humans receive and absorb it. From now on, the national computer would trigger the global emergency broadcast system, and the signal would be sent simultaneously to every connected device worldwide. No sooner had he finished speaking than the notebook and phones on the desk fell under the Thronglets' control. The furious chief inspector lunged at Walker, but just as he did, the system finished loading. A high-frequency signal blasted worldwide, first knocking out the chief inspector, then the police station, then everyone across the region. Finally, Walker reached down to the unconscious chief inspector and extended his hand. When they woke, they would be the evolved new humanity. The story ended on Walker's triumphant success. The fifth story begins with a man, Philip, suddenly receiving a phone call with the news that his ex-girlfriend, Carol, had died unexpectedly. The memorial company, aiming to support the family, was organizing an immersive remembrance event. They were reaching out to people who had known Carol, collecting their memories to upload into the ceremony. The company had already sent Philip a kit. If he was willing to participate, he could try it out. Of course, it was completely voluntary. If he didn't want to help, that was fine too. Philip opened the package from the memorial company, and a small round device suddenly spoke to him in a human voice. Following the AI assistant's instructions, he pressed the device to his temple. The assistant told him to close his eyes and picture Carol's young face. But Philip's mind was blank. After all, they hadn't seen each other for decades, and Carol's image had long since blurred. The assistant reminded him that physical triggers, photos, songs, keepsakes, helped unlock memories. When Philip first knew Carol, smartphones and cloud tech didn't exist, so he had to dig through old physical photos in his attic. Philip found a box tied with a rubber band but didn't hand it over. Instead, he pulled out 3 Polaroids. He reset the device and used his eyes to feed the images into it. The first Polaroid captured their first meeting, a rooftop BBQ at a Brooklyn co-op. A crowd of cynical young people called themselves artists, musicians, outsiders. In the photo, Carol faced away from the camera, talking to young Philip. The AI assistant said it could enhance this moment by processing the image. Instantly, Philip's consciousness entered the photo's world. The assistant appeared as a human figure, explaining that as Philip's memories filled in, the details of this virtual space would become clearer. Eager, Philip moved toward Carol, but her face was blurry. Unless he could recall her features, the virtual Carol wouldn't have a face of her own. Philip remembered that Carol had just moved into the co-op, kept to herself while learning cello, and still had a boyfriend back home. The assistant corrected him. It was actually a fiancé. Carol wore an engagement ring. The photo's details were too faint for the naked eye, but the AI could enhance the data algorithmically. Philip was surprised. This was the first time he'd heard this. Maybe he had chosen not to see it or deliberately ignored the memory. Either way, this wasn't something to upload to the memorial. After all, Carol was already engaged, and flirting with someone else wasn't a pleasant memory. Back in reality, Philip moved on to the next photo. It was clearly another party. Young people always seemed to be partying. Philip's consciousness entered the virtual scene, and he introduced the new faces to the assistant. One of them was a blonde girl, and there were a bunch of strangers around. Neither Carol nor Philip appeared in the photo, but he was sure they were at that party. The assistant noticed they were playing a Fool's Gold record, which helped trigger memories through music. The assistant played the record, and memories flooded back like a tidal wave. Excited, Philip walked toward a side room, scanning past blurry faces until he spotted Carol at the end of a hallway, walking toward him. It was their first real conversation, and he still remembered the nervous excitement. But soon he realized chatting with Carol felt effortless. They were like lightning and thunder, instantly connected, and confirmed their relationship quickly. Clearly, this memory wasn't fit for the memorial ceremony either. The third photo was simple. Philip leaning outside a hallway door, utterly absorbed as Carol played the cello. The AI assistant said it could look it up if he remembered the name of the piece. Listening might help unlock more memories. Philip sighed, saying that was one Carol composed herself. They won't find it anywhere. The 3 photos offered very little information, and the assistant expressed its disappointment. But then Philip hesitated, mentioning he had other photos, though showing them probably won't help. A year after he and Carol broke up, he destroyed every image of Carol's face. Back then, he loved her more than anything, but she left him without hormone mercy, causing him to fall into a deep, painful abyss. Carol went on living her life, but Philip's came to a sudden halt. It took him 15 years to climb out of that dark hole. They never contacted each other after the breakup. The AI assistant suggested Philip keep recalling more memories based on the photos. The more he remembered, the more likely the system could reconstruct Carol's face. Here's a quick note. The assistant didn't just show Philip any clear photo of Carol's face because the system rules forbid using external material. This prevents outside factors from mixing with Philip's memories and helps ensure their accuracy. Back to the story. Philip uploaded a photo of the 2 of them at the Cape Cod Pier. They were deeply in love, mad about each other, desperate to stay together forever. So they decided to move in and find a place to live, even risking the landlord's wrath by painting the entire apartment blue. Shortly after, they both joined a band. Philip pulled out a 1991 gig photo. The assistant noticed Carol was playing keyboards, which seemed odd since she dreamed of being a cellist. Philip explained that was his idea. Cello didn't fit their band. Carol's good at all sorts of instruments anyway. Their band did well, but the lead singer quickly quit and later made a name in the music scene. Philip scoffed at that, calling the lead singer an arrogant jerk, and said Carol wasn't interested in keeping the band going. The assistant couldn't help but say he should have let Carol focus on her cello. This showed Philip hadn't really supported what Carol wanted. The next photo was from Halloween the same year. Carol wore a red dress. A guy in a suit was clearly hitting on her, while Philip was working behind the bar at a nearby pub. He was furious Carol didn't brush the guy off, but the assistant noticed Philip's flirtatious behavior with the blonde girl, and Philip quickly denied it, saying they were just colleagues. Carol thought he was teasing the blonde girl, but he wasn't. That night, they fought over it. Carol spent the whole evening sitting with that suit-wearing guy, and Philip was furious. Then the assistant pointed out he should have stepped up and taken Carol away. From the photo, she was leaning back trying to get away from that guy. Philip snapped, saying she sat there all night, didn't try to escape. But Philip was quickly proven wrong. Other photos showed Carol leaving the guy not long after. Philip was conveniently ignoring details to paint himself as the perfect victim. Trying to salvage some dignity, Philip accused Carol of picking fights after Halloween, saying she was mad he couldn't get to bed early and perform well at a next-day audition. It turned out Carol had landed a role in The Phantom of the Opera, which meant moving to London's West End for 6 months. Philip was bitter, thinking she was just off having fun, but Carol was genuinely happy. She sent postcards every week and they planned to meet in London that fall. Just then, the assistant spotted a photo showing Philip alone in bed, but someone else was clearly there taking the picture. Philip recalled it was his birthday, and the blonde girl had taken the photo. A man and woman alone in a room. It was obvious what happened. Philip admitted it was a one-time mistake he regretted deeply. No sooner had he said this than a phone rang in the virtual space. Carol rarely made international calls to save money, but that day she'd called early to wish him happy birthday, only to have the blonde girl answer instead. This led to a massive fallout between Philip and Carol. The assistant's tone was full of reproach. Philip had played the devoted lover, accusing Carol of betrayal, but it was actually Philip who'd cheated first. Philip tried to defend himself, saying things weren't that simple. He pulled out the rubber-banded box again and continued telling his story. A few months after his birthday, Philip bought a plane ticket to London to try to make amends. He booked an expensive hotel suite and took Carol out to a fancy restaurant. Secretly, he had prepared a ring and planned to propose, but Carol stayed silent the whole time, not even touching her glass of champagne, which caught the attention of the waitresses nearby. Suddenly, Philip became the center of attention. His face burned with embarrassment, his throat went dry, and he pleaded with Carol to say something, but she just kept her head down. Frustrated, Philip slammed his fist on the table, and Carol got up and left. The restaurant fell silent except for the clatter from the kitchen. Philip sat there feeling utterly humiliated. The staff wanted to waive the bill, but he insisted on paying. Philip kept talking about how sad he was, never once considering how Carol was feeling. The assistant snapped, saying Carol didn't refuse the champagne because she was being difficult. She was pregnant. The father was a one-night stand from the orchestra. In fact, the AI assistant was a virtual avatar programmed with the thoughts and memories of Carol's daughter. Its job was to help Philip choose what memories to keep in the memorial, so the daughter wouldn't have to review everything herself. The assistant explained that Carol rarely talked to her daughter about her relationship with Philip, nor did she stay with that one-night stand. That incident was a reckless mistake, caused by Philip's infidelity and Carol's moment of anger. Carol's daughter had met her biological father only several times and had been raised entirely by her mother. After the failed proposal, Carol wrote Philip a letter explaining everything, but Philip claimed he never received it. He dug out the last item in the box, a disposable camera. He had planned to take photos around the city after the proposal, but it had never been used. Suddenly, Philip remembered the camera wasn't completely unused. He rushed out, developed the film, and found only one photo, a messy hotel room floor. Carol had taken her suitcase and Philip had thrown things around in frustration. The assistant enhanced the photo and spotted a note on the floor addressed to Philip. That must have been the letter. But no matter how hard Philip tried, he couldn't pick up the letter from the photo. He recalled that night clearly. He was dead drunk, and the hotel maid had tidied up the room, piling his things into a corner. Philip had stuffed them all into a bag without reading carefully. Now, he rifled through the hotel booklet's pockets and found the note. In it, Carol explained why she had reacted the way she did in the restaurant. She hadn't expected a sudden proposal, and because she was pregnant, she didn't dare say yes. She just froze, unsure what to do. The one-night stand had been a childish act of revenge. Carol still hoped to work things out with Philip, but wasn't willing to terminate the pregnancy. The letter ended with an invitation. If Philip wanted to talk, meet her by the theater entrance after her show the next afternoon. But Philip had been too wrapped up in his own misery to notice how Carol was feeling. At this moment, he played the song Carol had composed again. The music carried him back through time to the door of that little apartment. When the song ended, Philip finally remembered Carol's face, only to realize she was gone forever, and that chance would never come again. The sixth story takes place in the near future when a company launches a groundbreaking immersive game called Infinity, where players explore the universe through a brain-computer interface. But the company's tech director, Robert, hijacks the software to create his own secret copy of the game universe. Worse, he sneaks off with his co-workers' DNA to build digital clones of them. Anyone Robert dislikes, whether the company boss or department heads, gets locked inside this closed-off digital world, forced to live as his slaves. A few clones, fed up with Robert's cruelty, band together, destroy the DNA samples, and steal the ship Callister to escape through a freshly patched system wormhole. They get dumped into the official Infinity game, but immediately the system flags them as bugs and starts erasing their clone universe. Robert's consciousness is wiped out in the process, signaling his complete demise. Though the big bad is gone, the clones face a harsh reality. Without player IDs, they're hunted by 30 million gamers. In this game world, launching a spaceship costs a fortune in credits, so the clones resort to robbing and killing to scrape together funds. After all, the players don't really die, they just lose levels and log out. But for the clones, this is no game. They have no extra lives, no save files. One day, Captain Nanette's robbery reveals something shocking. She bleeds. That never happens to regular users or NPCs. A player starts suspecting cheating hacks and rushes to report her. Without hesitation, Nanette takes out the accuser. The player logs out, vents on the game forums, and soon discovers many others have encountered anonymous robbers with no player tags. A programmer spots this bug and rushes to report it to the boss, Walton, only to realize her own clone is one of those anonymous bandits. Walton shrugs off the complaints, telling the programmer to cool it and mind his smelly business. He's too busy prepping for an interview with the New York Daily to care. Ever since Robert's death, he's been running the show. But during the interview, the reporter brings up the forum posts about frequent anonymous robberies and the bleeding. Infinity prides itself on being blood-free, and Walton doesn't want to get bogged down explaining this mess. He claims it's probably some patch gone wrong, nothing serious. The reporter then drops a bomb. Footage from before Robert's death shows a DNA cloning machine on his desk. He suggests Robert created sentient digital clones of real people and uploaded them into the game to satisfy some twisted fantasy. The reporter is surprisingly close to the truth. Walton warns the reporter not to publish a single word of this, or his lawyers will bury him alive. Unbeknownst to Walton, Nanette overhears the whole conversation. Suddenly it clicks why she's been getting heaps of unsolicited naked photos and threats connected to stolen DNA samples. She realizes she's very likely been cloned. Meanwhile, Walton remembers the programmer and wants her to catch the anonymous users, but the programmer leaves a note on the screen saying he's quitting. Nanette seizes the chance, volunteering to take over and begging Walton for unrestricted access. Cut back into the game world. Captain Nanette spots a solo player called Pixie logging in and immediately signals her teammate to swoop in for a robbery. They split up, creeping toward Pixie, but to their shock, this user's combat stats are off the charts. Captain Nanette nearly gets killed in the counterattack. At the last second, her teammate sneaks up from behind and lands a headshot. Only Pixie isn't down for good. She keeps popping back to life and chases them relentlessly. Meanwhile, the other teammate on the ship can't mind his own business. He hits the wrong button on Nanette's command chair and accidentally sends invites to every other player. Before they can retract it, a squad of legit gamers warps in their fighters and opens fire. Nanette and her teammate are suddenly under full assault, scrambling back through the teleport gate and begging their crew to beam them out. They arrive on the Callister to find the ship under heavy bombardment. Nanette frantically feeds credits into the warp drive and punches in a hyperjump. Pixie, outraged at being mugged for no reason, logs a formal complaint on the game's website. Back in the real world, the real Nanette sees the complaint ping her screen. She clicks the uploaded gameplay video and instantly recognizes the mugger as her own avatar, and the accomplice is none other than the company's intern. Nanette races to Walton's office, claiming these anonymous players are her digital clones, and reminds him she received a menacing call about stolen DNA samples from Robert's house, which must include Walton's as well. Walton frowns. The digital version of Walton should have been erased when the wormhole update ran, but Nanette doesn't yet know the full story. She tracks the IP of that threat call. It routed through an Infinity client on the same address as Robert's lab computer. In other words, the reporter was right. Someone's living in Infinity as a perfect digital copy. Walton pales because global law bans unauthorized cloning tech. If that leaks, the company is finished. He digs out Robert's old workstation for Nanette to inspect, and sure enough, finds the cloning data. Using a forensic scan, he locates where each rogue clone is roaming in the game. Back in the digital world, the clones, tired of running like rodents, gather to hatch a plan. Smart Captain Nanette realizes Robert's dev machine must still hold a special developer build of Infinity. If they can get the game's source code, they can spin up their own private universe, one they truly control. To do that, they need to break into the game's engine core, the heart of Infinity. But only two people, Robert and Walton, have core access. Digital Walton is dead, so they'll have to recruit the real-world Walton. As soon as Nanette proposes this, the digital programmer objects, saying they're all illegal clones of Walton's employees. If they expose themselves, federal agents will lock Walton up. Just then, a blonde boy suggests an alternate approach. Explore Digital Walton's quarters first. Stunned, Captain Nanette reminds everyone that when they escaped through the wormhole, the ship auto-reset and all survivors were dumped into generic living pods. Walton shouldn't have a private suite, yet here's a hidden lounge labeled Walton. That means a scrap of Walton's DNA must have tagged along through the wormhole, maybe a shard of fingernail or a stray atom caught in the vortex. Even a microscopic fragment can reboot a full digital avatar. New players almost always start in the newbie zone. They race off to find him. Soon, on the starter planet, Nanette encounters Digital Walton, now living like a feral NPC. He's thrilled to see the ship again and insists on bringing along his buddy. At that moment, real-world Nanette, having traced data flows, also logs into the same initial planet, and there meets her own digital copy. The four regroup aboard the Callister. Digi-Nanette lays out her plan, asking Walton to grant core access privileges. Walton, however, immediately attacks, arguing that the only way to eliminate the company's risk is to exterminate all digital copies. The blonde boy sacrifices himself to save the others. Without player IDs, the clones can't respawn if they die. Enraged, Digital Nanette guns down Walton. Appalled by such brutality, Nanette logs out of the game mid-fight, kicks Walton's avatar in the face, and prepares to storm out. Walton, desperate to keep his secrets hidden, tries to bribe Nanette with money. But before he can speak another word, a car comes racing in, striking Nanette as she runs for the exit. Meanwhile, Digital Walton tracked down Digital Nanette, warning her that getting into the core wasn't going to be easy. 12 years ago, Walton was just a wealthy trust fund kid with nothing better to do than dabble in investments. It was in this phase he met the genius programmer Robert and immediately fell for the game Robert was building. They hit it off and set out to make the game huge. Back then, Robert had designed only 4 planets. Walton thought that was nowhere near enough. The game needed at least 50 planets to really take off. But designing them all by hand was painfully slow. So Walton pushed Robert to write a procedural generation program that could automatically create planets. Still, even then, Robert had to personally check each one. He simply couldn't keep up, and for secrecy's sake, he couldn't bring in anyone else to help. That's when Walton had a breakthrough, the DNA replicator, one of his investments. It was never released publicly because of backlash, but it could clone humans inside virtual reality, using just a single hair or a bit of saliva. If they could create a digital clone of Robert in the code itself, fused with the game engine, then digital Robert could work around the clock inside a time bubble. That's why the Heart of Infinity was really a prison holding Robert's clone, trapped forever, endlessly building new game worlds. And of course, real-world Walton would do anything to keep that secret safe. Digital Nanette worried about real-world Nanette's safety and tried to reach out to the outside world, but she discovered that real-world Nanette had been in a car accident and was now brain-dead. With no escape route left, Digital Nanette ordered the programmer to set a course straight for the Heart of Infinity. The ship made quick work of the journey. Walton used his fingerprint to unlock access. Only one person could be transmitted inside at a time. He warned Digital Nanette to be careful. Inside, Robert had absolute authority. The next moment, Digital Nanette entered the Heart of Infinity. There, she found Digital Robert, deeply focused on creating planets. His mind and memories were frozen from over a decade ago, so he seemed surprisingly approachable. Nanette got straight to the point. She wanted a universe of their own. To her surprise, Robert offered a different option. With a snap of his fingers, he hacked into hospital monitors. Since real-world Nanette was brain-dead, Robert could upload Digital Nanette's consciousness into her body, letting her live a real life again. But there was a catch. The others on the ship would be doomed, because when Digital Nanette was transmitted into this universe, her code had already merged with the rest of the crews. To save herself, she'd have to sacrifice everyone else. Nanette gritted her teeth and chose to save her crew. Robert just laughed, saying that was a test and he knew she'd pick them. With Nanette's choice made, Robert started to copy and paste. Nanette stopped him quickly, wondering if he should be cutting and pasting. If he just copies their clones to the new universe, the originals will still be stuck here, suffering. Robert told her not to worry about that. Even if they're in danger, it won't affect her because he's keeping her here, with him. Years trapped in the core had worn Robert down. He longed for companionship, someone to keep him company. He couldn't leave the core or the entire game universe would collapse. And now, with Nanette at his mercy, he wasn't about to let her go. He silenced her to keep her from refusing. At the same time, trouble struck back on the ship. Real-world Walton learned from the programmer where the forced logout players were dying and where they'd respawn after rebooting. Seizing the chance, Walton snuck back on board, knocked out his digital clone, and took his place. Quietly, he approached the control panel and sent out invites to every player online. The colleague noticed and confronted him, immediately realizing this was a fake Walton, but the invitations were already sent. Walton logged out and vanished into the ship's shadows, leaving a mess behind. The players who'd been robbed were itching for revenge and ready to give the main crew a hard time. The Callister immediately made a break for it, but the revenge-seeking players were too many and too fierce. Under their relentless barrage, the ship's shields started to crumble, quickly dropping below critical levels. With no choice left, the Callister was forced to head straight for the Heart of Infinity. Digital Nanette scanned her surroundings, grabbed a toy from the ground, and threw it right at Robert's forehead. The hit was perfect, causing the source code keeping Infinity running to die on the spot, and the whole game universe began to collapse. Panicking, Digital Nanette frantically searched through the wreckage for the hard drive containing their data. The Callister's shields had hit zero. One more hit and they'd be finished. In that desperate moment, she found a hard drive and hurriedly plugged it into an outdated computer. Instantly, a powerful surge of energy exploded from it, sweeping through nearly the entire game universe. Back in the real world, Walton saw the computer crash to a blue screen, flashing error code 606. He called the programmer, who confirmed the worst. The entire game and all backups had been wiped out. Infinity was gone for good. When the crew regained consciousness, their vision was flooded with red. As the hospital's Nanette woke up, the crew suddenly found their sight clearing. They had actually entered Nanette's body along with Digital Nanette. Now, their consciousnesses had to share one flesh and blood vessel. Nanette had become, in a new way, the Callister itself. Not long after, Walton was arrested on multiple charges, bringing the whole story to a close. With that, Season 7 of this drama comes to an end. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.